Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. And the world will break apart.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here tonight to arm yourselves with knowledge about a tool that's being covertly used to usher in what Adolf Hitler and George Bush termed New World Order, and that's mind control. I've enjoyed talking with quite a few of you earlier this evening pertaining to how mind control has affected some of you or some of your loved ones. Mind control is very prevalent in this country and around the world. These criminals that are in control of our country operate on the philosophy that secret knowledge equals power. Many government secrets and personal reputations were staked on the belief that I could not be deprogrammed to remember those things that I was supposed to forget. They were wrong. For as intelligent as these perpetrators are, they're limited in their thinking by their own immorality. They don't have wisdom. They don't think deep. And they never considered the strength of the human spirit. They never considered what would happen when a good man like Mark Phillips gained knowledge of their secrets and used them to restore a mind rather than control one. I know that I'm extremely fortunate to have survived my CIA, MK Ultra, White House, Pentagon level, trauma base, mind control victimization. Now that I'm in control of my own mind and ultimately my free will, I'm telling everything that I witnessed and saw and heard and photographically recorded behind the scenes of this New World Order effort. By telling their secrets, their power is eroding. I also speak out to give voice to the many, many mind control victims and survivors out there who can't think to speak out and tell what they know and what they've endured.
My name is I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia. My name is Mary. I was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1948.
My name is Claudia Mullen.
My name is Brice Taylor, and
My name is Cathy Lewis, and I'm from London, Ontario.
I was born in 1954 in Kentucky.
My name is Susan Benson, and I was born in 1955.
My name is Chuck Davenport. I was born and raised in the Saginaw Bay area of Michigan.
My name is Kathleen Sullivan. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm a mind control survivor, governmental CIA.
I speak out for the sake of my daughter, Kelly, who's now 16 years old and is a political prisoner in the custody of the state of Tennessee, where she's being denied any rehabilitation due to the political affluence of her abusers. She's counting on Mark and I to get this word out on her behalf. For Kelly's sake and for your sake, Mark and I have gone to great lengths to document the facts and the truths that are listed in our book, Transformation of America. Transformation of America is self-published, uncensored, so that you can have the facts that you have a right to know and a need to know. These truths have been covered up and kept from all of us for a long time under a blanket of so-called national security. This is the same blanket of national security that has prevented us from obtaining justice despite the extensive evidences and documentation we have. We have over 27,000 documents and evidences. Government insider testimony, medical records, more than enough evidence for any legal procedure in this country, including congressional. But this blanket of national security has stopped us from obtaining justice.
The United States government has implemented mind control experiments on unknowing victims since after World War II, under the guise of top secret projects. This is fact. Declassified documents corroborate this claim. This thread will take a deep look into mind control. The beginnings of control. The Illuminati was created in 1776 by a Bavarian Jesuit commissioned by the House of Rothschild. The Rothschilds are notorious as one of the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, and they rule over the world banking system. The Illuminati is the culmination of elite satanic bloodlines, secret societies, and Freemasons to form the basis of the New World Order. The premise behind the New World Order is to create a utopia for the elite to rule over a completely controlled world population of basically slaves. By the 19th century, Great Britain and Germany were the respective headquarters of the Illuminati. It was here that behavior science research was born. In 1921, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations was set up in London. The institute currently runs under the guise of a charity whose purpose is somewhat cryptic in wording. Basically, they offer consulting in personal development. However, a little research will bring you a view into the sinister side of this establishment. During World War II, many of Hitler's concentration camps served as research facilities where inhumane experiments were carried out on those interred. These atrocities included electroshock, mind control, surgical experimentation, and much more. These experiments propelled German scientists in the knowledge of what the human body and mind could endure. Following the war, some 1,500 German scientists were brought to the U.S. via a top-secret operation called Project Paperclip. Many of these included individuals who had committed horrific war crimes against humanity, but the U.S. saw an opportunity to exploit their knowledge in the areas of behavioral science and rocketry. Precursors to MK-Ultra. Once the National Security Council and the CIA were created, the first in a long line of brainwashing programs was enacted post-haste by the Navy in the fall of 1947. Project Chatter was an experiment into using drugs during interrogation. This project ran for 6 years until 1953. In 1950, the CIA began Project Bluebird, an expansion into the research of behavior modification. In 1951, Project Bluebird was renamed Project Artichoke, which explored using hypnosis and drugs in interrogation. This project ceased in 1956. In the meantime, MK-Ultra came into existence in 1953. MK-Ultra was a clandestine project dedicated solely to the exploration of mind control. There were a staggering 149 sub-projects under the umbrella of MK-Ultra. Project MONARCH is not a government-named operation, but the name given as description by survivors, therapists, and supposed insiders. Project MONARCH may have derived from MK-Search and its sub-projects. The term monarch refers to the monarch butterfly and how its characteristics correlate to a mind-controlled individual. It is best defined as the following. Project MONARCH could be best described as a form of structured dissociation and occultic integration in order to compartmentalize the mind into multiple personalities within a systematic framework. The general basis behind Project MONARCH is a method of traumatic and ritual abuse which shatters the mind into numerous personalities. These individuals are textbook cases of multiple personality disorder, now renamed dissociative identity disorder, or DID.
For me, today is quite a celebration in my recovery in ways that you'll be able to understand when I get a little bit further into my talk. But Today is the day that I'm going to overcome my fear of naming the names of my affluent and oftentimes publicly known famous people that were part of my abuse system. The reason I'm doing that is in order to stand and speak for other survivors who have not yet had the chance of recovering to the level that I've been so fortunate to be supported to recover to. And so today when I speak the names, I'm speaking the names for all of us, for all of this, so that we can begin to have this system exposed and stopped, so that these crimes that are occurring against children all over the world can come to an end. As Ted explained about the ritual abuse, I also am an intergenerational satanic ritual abuse and government mind control survivor. And satanic ritual was a way that my controllers were able to control me as using the satanic blood ritual as a trauma base. It's a conditioning in order to bring about the mind control, the levels of mind control and the multiple personality disorder that was the result of being tortured for so many different years and since I was a very small child. And I guess the easiest way to begin my story is to begin when I began waking up. In 1985, I had a head-on collision where my head smashed through the windshield of the car, and for the first time in my life, I had access to both sides of my brain. And there really wasn't anyone in 1985 that really understood much about ritual abuse or the memories that I started having. And so I entered school to work on my master's degree in clinical psychology, thinking that I might be able to understand what was going on with my own mind. But when my memories and flashbacks became so intrusive that I could no longer think without being constantly bombarded by visual and sensory images, much like the Vietnam veterans, I quit school and went into therapy full-time. I was in therapy every day for about 6 years on a daily basis, where I started documenting the horror of the rituals that I attended as a child, was taken to, and of all the child abuse that led to my further sophisticated programming, and then on into the government mind control, where I was used in the intelligence community with the elite families and with people such as my owner, who was Bob Hope. I did it. And thank you. And Henry Kissinger, who was responsible for programming me with what he called government mind files. And given all the names that I was remembering, she said, I think we need to get you out of town and into hiding for a while. So I left my home, my husband, my children, and everything that I had ever known, and went to an island where she found me a safe place to live. That's a whole nother story in itself, but while I was on the island, I realized, because I wasn't around the people that I was programmed to in my family, I realized that I had been used as a sex slave with Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon and all of these different presidents. Henry Kissinger took me into different agencies in D.C. and asked me to use my photographic memory, which he had programmed in, to document documents that he wanted to have in my mind, so that if he ever needed to pull up information, he could do that. And I was also used with as an information gatherer between a lot of the members of this elite, the global elitists that feel that, and I listened in between Kissinger and Rockefeller's, they talked about the fact that 98% of the world population really doesn't think and doesn't deserve to be alive, and that they aren't genetically elite like they are and their progeny, and they really wanted to reduce the population of the planet so that it would be left in a more pristine way for their progeny. Adolf Hitler and George Bush both talked about the New World Order. And from what I now understand, the concentration camps in Nazi Germany were actually used for mind control experimentation. And Mark Phillips, who was a person that I knew several years ago, actually shared with me, and it's documented in Linda Hunt's book, Project Paperclip, that Mark Phillips actually was instrumental and was a witness in flying these Nazi doctors to our country and installing them into the major universities. They were given political immunity as they continued to do the experimentation on the mind. And a lot of survivors that I talk with from all over the world and that write me letters are naming all of these different people and are naming the different places that they were taken into hospitals, universities, military bases in order to further their programming. The other thing I would like, that I think is really, really important to explain, is that people that have been satanically, ritualistically abused are controlled and are actually, the plan of control was to manipulate people through, not only through the trauma which causes the multiple personality and dissociation, but also the guilt. And I don't know that I could really explain to you, but I think that those of you that are parents might understand the absolute terror and horror of waking up, as I did, to realize that not only had my parents done this horrific abuse to me, but that I had also passed this down to my children in a programmed state that I was totally and completely unaware of. And I think that anyone that ever says that they've been programmed or ritually abused and says that they did not abuse their own children or pass this down are really not truly survivors of this abuse, because that is the way that they keep people totally and completely under control. I believe that there are children all over the world who are suffering from this and are stuffed away in mental hospitals or prisons or whatever and not believed. And so in this way, the plan continues to proliferate, and these children end up not getting the help that they deserve because of the media cover-up, because this is all such a large political agenda with such, as you can see, it's got wide backing. It's got a lot of years of loyalty to it and a lot of people and a lot of technology. But I believe that they were short-sighted as far as not understanding that even their technology that was guaranteed that I could never remember by national security agenda was that they were very short-sighted in their own spirituality, to know that my innate spirituality would be what would lead me out of this and into the truth of what happened. And so that's where I believe that as we're all able to connect more spiritually, to be discerning and to not just take what people say or what you read in the newspaper, like with Mr. Harris, to not just believe what you read, but to question it, and to stop watching all of this television that is just giving you the propaganda lies that they want you to believe, but there is a way out of it, and that's by learning to critically analyze, think on our own, and trust ourselves to know that we know the truth. I think it's really important, and I'd like to thank Barbara Marciniak and Sylvia Gillot for being there for people like myself who are able to really support people in the truth of what happened, and to continue to get this information out and to have an open mind about what's happened so that we can begin to bring an end to this.
Inordinate amount of alters in the victim survivor, with numerous backup programs, mirrors, and shadows. A division of light side good, and dark side, bad, altars are interwoven in the mind and rotate on an axis. One of the main internal structures, of which there are many, within the system is shaped like a double helix consisting of 7 levels. Each system has an internal programmer which oversees the gatekeeper, demons, who grant or deny entry into the different rooms.
Born into it for over 30 years, and her name is Svali. Svali, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, it's nice to have you here, and I know you don't give radio interviews, and I really want to thank you because I think it really does help the American people understand about this secret organization that you were born into. So I guess before we, I guess we can just start from the beginning and tell us right from the beginning, you were born into this from wealthy parents, and tell us about your training in this group and when you were a young child and then up into your orientation at the Vatican. Go ahead.
That's a pretty broad area, though, Greg. I mean, that could take hours, if you know what I mean.
Yes, but if you could just outline it for us.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in a group. I was born in Germany, came to the U.S. very young, and basically went through all the training that the group, all members of the group do undergo training to different degrees, depending on the role. By the time I was a teenager, I was a youth leader, and by the time I was 22, I became the youngest member of Leadership Council in San Diego County. And at that time, I was a head trainer. I was the 6th trainer. I eventually moved up to the 2nd position. Mm-hmm. And when I was 12, I had mentioned with you the ceremony at the Vatican. That they really do make all leadership in the group undergo at some point.
Now, basically when you were growing up, I remember you told me that you were instilled at a young age. You were born to a very wealthy, well-to-do family. You moved back to the States. You were told at a very young age you were special. You were chosen, correct?
Well, they tell everyone in the group that they're special and chosen. And in fact, that's one of the things that made me very cynical when I was older, is that, you will never meet a person who's an Illuminati who's not been told and programmed for years that they're special, they're the only one that can do things for quote-unquote family. But I was told, yes, I would do great things for family one day. And the reason why, I guess, I can filter some of this with an objective view is I know what my role in the group was, and it was over quite a significant number of other people. So I don't evaluate my role or specialness within the group, not so much by what I was told, but by what I did.
So you reached the age of 12, and then you're told by your parents you're going to an induction ceremony in the Vatican. Can you tell us how that happened and what occurred at that ceremony when you went there?
Okay. This isn't easy to talk about, as you know. When I was 12, I was flown over to Germany, and I was at, I'll call him the German father's house over there. And there was some preparation for a few days beforehand, and I was told that there would be a very important ceremony, and it was considered a sealing ceremony at that point. And basically, I was told a little bit about what I was expected to do during the ceremony. When we got there, we went to the Vatican. There's underneath the Vatican. There's a large room that I described to you when we talked before. It has 13 catacomb chambers leading into it with and what they do is they, as you go down these steps into the room, you can see that it's almost circular, and so they're all around it, and they bring out the mummies from the catacombs, and they set them beside each one, and they say that the spirits of the fathers watching over the ceremony. And during the ceremony, there was a large table in the center of the room. It was on top of a huge golden pentagram, and they had a ceremony there.
Okay, now how many other children were with you being inducted into the family or the order, as they call it?
There were 2 other children at that point, and there were several adults too.
Okay.
See, the church also brings in adults to swear their allegiance to, just so you know. I was told, and I don't know if this is true, but if you want to rise to a certain position within the Catholic Church hierarchy, you do have to go through that ceremony as well.
Okay, so you're down in this room with, your parents weren't present.
No. The German father and the French father were, yeah.
Okay, and at that point, tell our listeners what you witnessed.
Well, there was a table. It looked like dark glass in the center of the room. I mean, it was made of stone, but it was very shiny and dark and black. And it may have been something like obsidian or onyx. I'm not sure. You know, I'd have to. That's the only time I've seen stone like that. And it had like around the corners, they had like these gold, I guess, channels that you know, to collect fluids. And little boy was placed in the center of the table and drugged. I think he was drugged because he was very quiet. He didn't move or say anything during the ceremony.
This was a little 3 or 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then they continued to go ahead. They continued to do a child sacrifice.
Yes,
right
they
in front
did.
of
They
you.
did. Yes. Yeah, I told you about that before. Yeah.
Now, afterwards, quite what a unbelievable experience for a youth. I mean, for a 12-year-old. I mean, I just what went through your mind? I guess when that happened. I mean,
I was terrified. I mean, I was absolutely horrified. I can't describe the terror you feel when you go through something like that.
And do you remember the words they were saying as this was going on?
The man was in scarlet. He was speaking in Latin, and basically he was saying, you know, please accept the sacrifice, you know, on this day. But then, you know, and then he said the sacrifice will seal the ceremony, and then he did it. Again, I was so terrified that. Have you ever been in a situation where your heart's racing, but you can't do anything, and so you're just kind of sitting there, and you're kind of like fading in and out?
Well, you know, I can remember as a youth being frightened, but I don't think I've ever
no. All right. Well,
gone through anything quite like what you
Yeah,
had.
imagine your heart rate going up to about 220. You can't move, so you're kind of shaking, but trying like not to show it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was horrible. And I was keep thinking inside, I can't wait. I can't wait. I mean, you don't say this, but inside you're just kind of saying over and over, I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. Afterwards, the man in scarlet, he had a huge golden ring on his hand, and he came over to the center of the room, and he had each of the people that were swearing that day. I had to go forward and kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my allegiance to the new order, to the new world order, until my death.
Now, at that point, you are escorted out.
Yes. Yeah. After the ceremony was all over. I mean, the other people also did theirs as well. You know, they had to swear their allegiance too. And then
they were what, the same age? They were the same age as you?
The 2 children were, but there were also 3 adults that went forward and did the same. And afterwards, we were told, may the same to you or worse occur should you ever break this oath.
Admiral Stanfield Turner, in August of 1977, before a Senate committee, revealed to this committee that, yes, the CIA was doing mind control on countless numbers of Americans who were, and this was being done without their consent, and he even told some of the methods that they use: hypnosis, electroshock, drugs. This is a newspaper article from the time period, and here you see listed one of their programmers. How do they do this mind control? Well, the book will explain it. That's why I wrote the book. I can't go into the details of how they do this mind control, but I can say simply that it is a very sophisticated combination of every mind control technique that has ever been thought up. Okay? Now, if you talk or listen to someone in the CIA, Sometimes you will hear them say, well, we tried behavioral modification, but it only works in such a percentage of the cases. And we tried this method of mind control, but it only works in a small percentage of the cases. And we tried this, and they make it appear like they've discarded all of these. The truth is if you take this method of mind control, which only works, let's say, in 70% of the cases, and match it to this type of mind control, which only works in 70% of the cases, and match it to this, and make a group package, by the time you've gone through all these many different types of mind control, you create something that totally locks the person into your control. This is my co-author. Now, when they begin with a child, they start traumatizing it. The human mind is like a computer. You've probably heard people say that the human mind is like a computer, and that if you got all of the computers in the world and put them together, then in some functions the human mind would outstrip it. In order to make computers functional, they had to learn how to section off memory. When you reboot your computer, there's memory there that you can't touch. The Illuminati learned centuries ago how to section off memory within the human mind. And it's done with amnesia walls. And the amnesia walls are built by trauma. If you look at a timeline here, and here's a point in time when, let's say, you're in war and your buddy gets killed and it's a trauma to you, you may take and build amnesia walls around that particular event in your mind. That's called post-traumatic stress syndrome. The Illuminati learned this trick many centuries ago, and they traumatize a person until they shatter their mind into thousands upon thousands of disassociated states. Okay, it's like taking a mirror and throwing it against the ground and breaking it into thousands of pieces. And then they know how to go in and find each of those little pieces, and with that little disassociated part of mind, memory, they through programming, build that, each piece, into what they want. Perhaps they want that piece to be a personality. Then they will give that piece of the mind an identity, a history, a job, and the full works. And they'll also attach a hypnotic cue that they can pull that piece of mind, that alter, that personality, they're called alters or personalities, so that they can pull that to the front of the mind. Then they build very complex alter systems. My co-author here, her mind was shattered 30,000 ways, and then to build an alter system, the front of her alter system had 13 by 13 grid, which is 169 personalities. And then there were 13 sections of that. And all of these have amnesia walls between them, and all have hypnotic cues attached to pull them to the minds. That's just a small part of her system. There are many hidden worlds, as she had two programmers competing against each other for control of her and putting in hidden worlds. And basically what you have with these people is they've made a mess of their minds, they've shattered them into many pieces, and they've tried to scrape up a few things and pull together this mess. So you have, like, if you're comparing this to a store, you've got a nice storefront, but if you go out behind the store, there's a lot of garbage out there and a big mess. They like to create the best fronts for these systems of alters. They like to hide what they're doing. They like to give them, they like to create a personality or several personalities to hold the body that have the most legitimate, the best front that they can imagine. Now, here's another transparency. This came in color from Bethesda, which is one of the places that they program with. And what this is showing here, although in this copy it's black and white, is that the mind of a multiple personality is different than someone who doesn't have MPD. If I was to act like a different person and they took a PT scan of my brain, it would look the same every time. But when they switch personalities, they switch alters, the brain PT scans are vastly different, thus proving that their brains are not the same. They do other things to these people too, like they want to get a photographic memory. You electronically scar the brain stem, and that creates in the child a photographic memory before you then begin dividing their personalities, and you get a system of multiple personalities with photographic memories. MPD has recently been renamed DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder. Now, some people have wondered, why is it that I am not giving you solutions to all of this? And the reason why is that this is extremely sophisticated, and before you know what the problem is, I can't give you the answer. You need to know what the problem is. You need to know what's going on. And I believe that once we start seeing what's happening, then the solutions to this will start appearing. However, I can tell you that when I started working with people that were in the Illuminati, that wanted out, that were wanting to, that were sharing information with me and everything, I thought at the time that the therapists were taking care of them. And then I began to realize that what was happening is that hundreds of thousands of these mind-controlled slaves were going into therapists for various reasons, and the therapist that knew something would begin to start working with some of the multiplicity in their minds. And the therapists who would work, they like 1 hour a week with these people and charge them maybe $100 or $200 for that hour. And they would tell these victims of mind control that they were getting better. These people thought, well, this is great, I'm getting better. The therapist liked it because they were supporting themselves, they were making good money. And the Illuminati was liking it too because they were continuing to use these slaves. And people don't understand how sophisticated this is. In looking at how they have designed this mind control, the engineering and thinking that's gone into it, in my opinion, far surpasses what was put into the Apollo project. So Walt Disney, Disneyland, Disney World are great programming centers, great places for Illuminati rituals, but Disney movies, which people think are family movies, they have been some of the primary films used to program these mind control victims. The Wizard of Oz was one of the standard programming themes, and Alice in Wonderland was another standard programming theme. And then you see sometime in the 70s or 80s that they started switching and started using more of the alien type themes for the mind control programming. So you started seeing Star Wars and Star Trek and the Star Trek spin-offs being used a lot for the mind control. That gave them an advantage. How did it give them the advantage? Well, like in the Alice in Wonderland, your master sets himself up as the White Rabbit. In the Wizard of Oz, he's the wizard. In this alien stuff, the programmer pretends to the poor victim who's drugged and under hypnosis and being tortured that he is an alien, perhaps from a race that's far advanced of ours. I went through and tried to understand the encounters of the third kind, and I interviewed people that had been abducted by aliens. What I found is that every one of them had this type of mind control. Some of them I couldn't tell them about it because, as I've been trying to get across to you, if you start working with some of these people, it's a very delicate thing, and you could trigger suicide programs. Area 51 is being used to program a lot of people with this alien programming. If you set in a program when you fly a helicopter to pick up a slave and you shine a light in his eyes, you can have him programmed to believe that that light is a UFO. So that's one explanation for a lot of the alien phenomena and the encounters of the third kind. The mind control was used during the 50s. It was, they got the sophistication down for doing it to an individual. So you'll see that in the 1960s, groups like the CIA began shifting the emphasis of things into learning how to do. They infiltrated the different cults, like you have Jim Jones and the Branch Davidian. There were many Branch Davidians, and they infiltrated one group of the Branch Davidians at Waco with 7 of their mind-controlled slaves, like David Koresh. And then they began using and testing group mind control. A report from Iron Mountain, you know that they created 3 pseudo-wars as a substitute for an actual fighting war, and that those 3 wars are being implemented today to keep us in a state where they can have all kinds of laws to control us. And those 3 wars are the war on the environment, the war on drugs, and then, of course, their plans to create a mock alien invasion.
The abduction accounts recorded by millions of people all over the world, regardless of time, race, culture, and upbringing. Dr. John Mack, professor at Harvard Medical School, a psychiatrist and writer, also looked into the UFO and abduction phenomenon for several decades and came to similar conclusions as Vallée and Hynek. Although he recently passed away, his contributions to the study of ufology and alien abductions is highly touted and greatly respected. He states in an interview with Nova Online when asked if the phenomenon is literally physical or psychological, stating, quote, "Yes, it's both. It's both literally physically happening to a degree, and it's also some kind of psychological, spiritual experience occurring and originating perhaps in another dimension. And so the phenomenon stretches us, or it asks us to stretch to open to realities that are not simply the literal physical world, but to extend to a possibility that there is other unseen realities from which our consciousness, our, if you will, learning processes over the past several hundred years have closed us off." End quote.
So what seems to be the case is they come from some other domain, some place, maybe not another star or maybe from another dimension, but they manifest, they show up here in our physical world. People have a number of cases where people are just playing gone. A child comes into the mother's room. "Mom, you weren't there during the night when I came." There is burned earth outside where the ships have landed. There is physical. It may not satisfy our criteria of proof, but proof may be something which only operates within the frame of evidence of this physical world in the box you mentioned before that we live in. This is what's going on here is something in some ways more subtle. In other words, something coming from another dimension into our world, which is very commonly experienced in other cultures, but not in this culture.
John Mack, who recently passed away, but he was at Harvard, and according to his own testimony, he says, I was not a believer in this thing. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just kept hearing about these things. So he came to this conclusion that these were real physical abductions. Very, very slowly he came to that conclusion. And rather skeptically. He didn't want to come to that conclusion. But eventually the data was so much that he could not overcome it. And he had to just say, well, it's happening. Something physical is happening. Dr. David Jacobs has done similar research. He was quite upbeat about this whole thing for a long time. But in the last several years, he's become very downcast about his discoveries, because he's discovering that these beings that are taking people are smarter than us, they're stronger than us, and they have a hybridization program going on. Right. That they're creating a hybrid race to take over, and he says at best we're going to be second-class serfs. So he's very discouraged, and I can see why. You know, I think if you discover these things, and yet you don't understand that there's a greater power, which is Jesus Christ, who has a much better plan, then I would be extremely depressed. You know, I mean, and in a way I'm sort of upbeat about the whole thing, because I see that we are getting very close to the end. Right. But it's also kind of scary. I mean, there's crazy things going on.
Dr. David Jacob, an associate professor of history at Temple University, specializing in 20th century American history and culture, has also studied the UFO and abduction phenomenon for over 40 years. In an interview with L.A. Marzulli in the book Alien Interviews, Jacobs comments on the alien abduction phenomenon, stating, quote, "This is a phenomenon that is either psychological or it is happening. There is very little in the middle. I have learned that the abduction phenomenon is vast, global, and it occurs with great frequency," end quote. Whitley Strieber, in his classic account of an alien encounter in the book Communion, records his experience with these entities, stating, quote, "I became entirely given over to extreme dread. The fear was so powerful that it seemed to make my personality become evaporate. Whitley ceased to exist. What was left was a body in a state of raw fear so great that it swept about me like a thick, suffocating curtain, turning paralysis into a condition that seemed close to death. I died and a wild animal appeared in my place," end quote. Then, in a later release in a book entitled Transformation, The Breakthrough, he dives deeper into the experience, stating, quote, "Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life and death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me might have reference to the eternal. There are worse things than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon has never been spoken among the scientists and doctors who are working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At the very least, I was going stark, raving mad," end quote. Then later in the same book, he states, quote, "I felt an absolutely indescribable sense of menace. It was hell on earth to be there in the presence of these entities. And yet I couldn't move, couldn't cry out, couldn't get away. I lay as still as death, suffering inner agonies. Whatever was there seemed so monstrously ugly, so filthy and dark and sinister. Of course they were demons. They had to be, and they were here and I couldn't get away," end quote. According to many researchers in the field, and even the people who have directly experienced this phenomenon for themselves, all seem to agree that there is a spiritual element driving this phenomenon. It is clear that there is a metaphysical nature to the UFOs and the alien abductions themselves. Furthermore, the startling similarities with the phenomenon with the occult and other historical, mythological accounts of direct contact with demonic entities should be alarming. Jack Valet alludes to this concept, stating, quote, "The symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation ritual or astral voyage that is embedded in the occult traditions of every culture. The structure of abduction stories is identical to that of occult initiation rituals. The UFO beings of today belong to the same class of manifestation as the occult entities that were described in centuries past," end quote. There is another angle to this phenomenon that is seldom discussed, but is very important to point out. That is the solution to help stop those who experience the alien abduction phenomenon. Joe Jordan, state-sanctioned director and field investigator for MUFON, through his investigation at CE4 Research Group, has discovered that calling upon the name of Jesus Christ during the abduction can make the experience stop instantly. On their website, ce4research.com, the mission statement states, quote, "The mission of CE4 Research Group is to share with the world the most powerful evidence known that exposes the alien entities for who they really are. The evidence is in the testimony of those who have overcome the experience, the oppression, the bondage, the harassment, the control, the lies, the deception that these entities perpetuate by calling out in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Through this evidence of these testimonies, we will be able to help others. The world asks for this evidence, and we will give it to them." End quote.
A lot of the people that have seen my videos know my testimony of how it all started with one book. On a vacation trip to visit my brother, I picked up one book, UFO Crash at Roswell, and it was like opening a doorway into something that would totally change my life. And it has, and it's changed a number of times since then, but that one started it. It put me on a quest to find out what this UFO phenomenon was about. And like I said, I came into it as an agnostic with an open mind and what I thought was total objectivity, and became a MUFON investigator. Was doing UFO investigation, sighting investigations for a few years, and then got caught up in what is called the New Age belief system and metaphysical studies, because, you know, it's part of this UFO phenomenon. It goes hand in hand. I was caught up in all of that too, and it changed my worldview again, from being, you know, an agnostic humanist to one who was into the New Age and actually practicing these metaphysical studies myself. And I was able to see the UFO phenomenon through another set of eyes. And then in 1996, I was shown the true gospel, where it actually caught my attention, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior in November of 1996. And now I was able to look at this phenomenon in yet another set of eyes. So initially, was this what I was looking for? No, it was not. Well, the first case I came across, I actually had interviewed this gentleman who claimed to have had an abduction experience, along with other sighting experiences and other what he felt were abduction experiences too. But we decided to interview him, and this was 6 months before I became a Christian. This was in the middle of 1996 that we did the interview with him. And he used to come to my monthly meetings, my MUFON meetings that I had, and he just wanted to share what he had been through, you know, and he had an interest because of his experiences in the UFO phenomenon. And myself and one of my lead investigators, actually my partner that helped me found CE4 in the very beginning, his name was Wes Clark. He was a very good investigator, worked for the Space Center at the time as a quality inspector. And he had a good organizational skill of helping do these investigations. And him and I interviewed this gentleman in his home for 2 hours on videotape, and just let him talk. And we asked some questions and would guide him along just to try to get all of his information. Well, we put it away, and we didn't see anything unusual at the time. And that was interesting in itself, that we didn't catch this. But when I became a believer in November of 96, I was ready to put all of this away, because God showed me what this UFO experience was about, that there was a evil demonic side to it. And I felt that as a new Christian and wanting to do the things that God asked of me, that we shouldn't be involved in this, and I'd put it away. And God says, no, I got plans for you, and you need to take this message back to, you know, where you came from. And I said, you know, I can't take the Word of God back to these New Age people. I said, they don't believe it to be the inerrant Word of God. As a matter of fact, they don't even believe in God being a personal, you know, being, an entity that they can relate to. So I said, you got to give me something better. And nobody told me that as a new Christian you don't talk to God like that. But I did, not knowing any better. And he answered, and he says, guess what? You already have it. You just haven't seen it. And I couldn't understand what that meant at first. So I asked my partner, Wes, who was a Christian at the time, and I said, we've got something here somewhere that we need to go back and look at. We went back and looked at some of the cases that we had, and we pulled this particular one back out. It was a gentleman named Bill D. We pulled his video back out, plugged it into the VCR, and sat back and started watching and went, oh my. Do you remember hearing this? And Wes says, I don't. And we were sitting right there watching the gentleman and listening to him. But yet we were blinded and deafened at the time we did the recording. Nothing registered until this time when God said, go back and look, you already have it. And what he shared was an experience, atypical, abduction type experience, where he had been taken, experienced being taken, and immediately panicked and in fear, and he himself, actually just being a brand new Christian, called out during this panic experience in saying, Jesus, Jesus, help me. And when he did that, in an instant, the experience abruptly stopped. And he felt like he was thrown back into his bed. He even startled his wife. She asked him why he was jumping on the bed. And he said, you know, when he shared that experience, he didn't understand what it meant. And when we heard that, we knew we had something. Because never before, in all the studies we had done of the other work that the top researchers had done in the country, you know, this was 15 years ago, the big names, never before had anybody said that an experience could be stopped. As a matter of fact, they all said that it wasn't possible to stop an experience. Okay? But yet we had a gentleman that said he did, and in a particular way. So I contacted these top researchers around the country, got their home phones, called them up. They're nice guys. They can talk. You can talk to them just like me and you were talking. Most of them are very nice gentlemen. And I've met them at the conferences over the years. And I said, guys, I've got a very unusual case here. I'd like to run it by you and see what you think. And after I shared the story, they all asked, can we go off the record? And I said, well, that's fine. I said, I'm just trying to get answers here. Well, when I say go off the record, that means I can't tell you who said what, but I can tell you what they said. Well, these guys, they said that, yes, we had come across similar cases where people had cried out in the name of Jesus, or had quoted scripture, or had sung a Christian hymn, and the experience stopped. And I said, really? And I said, first off, I've never read anywhere where you guys have said that an experience can even be stopped. And then second, I've never read where you've stated where they could be stopped in any type of manner like this. And I said, why is that? And one of two answers, or both answers, would come out from each of these researchers. The first one was pretty common amongst them, was we didn't know what to make of it. But you know what? I would have been fine with that, because to me, that was an honest answer. I mean, I didn't know what to make of it either in the beginning. So I could relate to them on that answer, but they always would follow it with a second answer. And it was, we were afraid to go there, meaning the spiritual side of this, because it might affect our credibility in the UFO realm. So what I was seeing is they had research, evidence, part of the UFO puzzle that we've all been trying to put together, but they chose not to share it because of it affecting their credibility. Not that it was getting to the truth or it was completing an entire puzzle, but because of personal issues, personal agendas. And you know what that's called? It's called a cover-up. Throughout the UFO community, you hear government cover-up this, government cover-up that. But I'm telling you from experience in dealing with this type of case that there's been a cover-up all along by the researchers in this UFO community phenomenon that are supposedly giving us the truth and the answers to this experience. It's coming from them because they've got personal agendas. They only want to share certain things. You know, and if you ever follow these conferences that are going on out there, it's like they never give you the whole thing. You know, you get little bits and pieces. And I guess it's part of keeping you busy coming to their conferences. You know, but I've been sharing the same message for years now, the same evidence, and it still disturbs them.